Log on to patreon.com/Dane Calloway or paypal.me/Dane Calloway to support me, my channel, and my content. Any amount is very much appreciated, and I humbly thank you.
Aborigines, which means what? Black folks. You never find a white aborigine. Rather, aborigines are called natives, or they're always dark-skinned people. You and I are aborigines, but you don't like to be called an aborigine. You want to be called an American.
This means, in the case of an American Negro, it comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you, that the Indians were you, that the Indians were you, that the Indians were...
I was up in Pine Ridge with Russell Means at the Sun Dance.
One of my dearest friends.
I took my wife and my son. My son knew how to go.
After the Civil War ended in the early 1800s, Oklahoma became the resettlement destination for 40 to 90 Southern Indian tribes, clans, and nations alike. By unofficial orders from then-President Andrew Jackson, he deliberately initiated the immigration with an E of Native Indians from their respective territories throughout all of the lands east of the Mississippi River to the westlands of the Mississippi River. Having started with the Turtle Clan in 1817, then called the Lochapoka, and then next were some members of the Muskogee Clan from 1819 to 1829, later known as the Creek Nation, in which they were all natives of the lands of both Alabama and Georgia. Even though most of the tribes left and moved peacefully, some of the members, along with other Indian tribes, resisted to go, so they stayed home. Some copper-colored Indians left because they didn't want to be faced with the possibility of being enslaved, while others stayed home because they did not want to abandon their sacred lands of their original inhabitants. From the year 1817 to 1836, the most commonly known Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole tribes, not to exclude the more uncommonly known many other Indian nations of the southeast regions of America, were all affected by President Jackson's malicious integration of immigration with an E, and they too moved west, resettling all over the state of Oklahoma. The more commonly known signs of resistance came from the most recently established Cherokee tribe, originally known as the Ane-Yangwea tribe of the Great Lakes. They later moved to much larger areas of landmass, stretching throughout the southernmost regions of North America. According to historical records, these group of native Indians were called the Salagi tribe before the late 1700s, a detached tribe of the Iroquoian family. It's an open secret that the term Cherokee is a Creek word, meaning people who spoke a different language. The Salagi later adopted Cherokee as their new tribal name during the 1820s, while simultaneously revamping themselves by creating their own new form of tribal government based on the United States laws and regulations. This was all done to counteract against ceding their full territory. Rather than being governed by a traditional tribal council, the newly established Cherokees wrote a constitution and created a two-house legislature. They learned to speak English by their fellow copper-colored brothers and sisters, and they also created a Cherokee syllabary to form their own written language called the Cherokee language in the early 1820s. Christianity was adopted as their religion that propelled the tribe to be considered a, quote, civilized tribe due to them replacing their very own cultures with white European cultures. Quietly, lots of these decisions were made without the direct consent of the full-blooded Cherokee leaders. In the year of 1827, the state of Georgia began the process of demanding the U.S. government to forcefully remove the Cherokee Nation from its lands of the state. The Cherokee Nation emphasized the assimilation of its culture and sent yearly delegations to Washington to lobby on their behalf. But when the tribe wrote its constitution earlier in 1827, the Georgia government saw the move as an assertion of Cherokee sovereignty, whereas the tribe could become an independent nation within the state of Georgia. This form of bravery rubbed off Senator Hugh White the wrong way. On the date of February 22nd, 1830, Hugh White proposed a bill from the Committee on Indian Affairs called the Indian Removal Act to provide for, quote, any exchange of lands with the Indians residing in any of the states or territories. According to the LOC, the Indian Removal Act was passed by the House and the Senate in the same day of May 26, 1830, then immediately signed into law by President Jackson just 2 days later. This sole authorization made it official for President Andrew Jackson to grant unsettled lands to the native Indians in exchange for their current Indian territories. So in response to this motion, the Cherokees took legal action in an attempt to save their lands. In their second most recent Supreme Court case, Worcester versus Georgia in 1832, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that the Cherokee Nation was entitled to federal protection over those of the state laws of Georgia. The court ruled that the Indian Nation was a, quote, distinct community in which the laws of Georgia can have no force, and into which Georgians could not enter without the permission of the Cherokees themselves, or in conformity with treaties. In spite of then Chief Justice Marshall ruling in favor of the Indians, the state of Georgia and President Jackson forced the Indian nations to cede approximately 8 million acres of their land to the United States government, making their new Indian territory the lands of Oklahoma and some westlands of Arkansas and Missouri. By the time the Indian Removal Act of 1813 was signed into law by President Jackson, The United States government managed to purloin the original Indian territories of Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, North Carolina, West Virginia, South Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, and many other southern states. The Treaty of New Echota, negotiated in 1835 and signed in 1836, was made by a small contingent of Cherokees led by John Ridge against the wishes of the majority of the tribe and its leader, Chief John Ross. John Ridge was later assassinated on June 22, 1839, as a result of the Cherokees having to forcefully cede their lands and unwillingly relocate, traveling some 800 miles to the Oklahoma Territory. Over time, this journey became known as the Trail of Tears. Imagine, if you will,
black folks too.
I'm just here to make you think.